The Witcher, and a lot of people hated this episode of Ciri in the Desert. The episode did have a few people that liked it though, and tried giving it 10 out of 10 on IMDb, and their contention seems to be some variation of, why are you complaining? It's true to the books. But was it? Saying things like this was all according to the book, so stop complaining. People shouldn't review if they haven't read the books. It was a great episode and followed the novel very well it was based on. Perfect book adaptation. I will grant you that a lot of the story beats are similar to the ones in the book and in a similar order, but I think this is a good visual representation because there's a part of the book where Ciri falls into the trap of a creature that's described in the book as a lot like the larval phase of an antlion, but far larger. So it lives underground and digs a pit, and its prey falls into the pit, rolls to the bottom, and then the antlion eats them. They mostly feed on ants and small insects in the real world, and this is what happened to Ciri, but with an antlion the size of a human. The creature is described in the book as having brown hooked pincers at least a yard long, so maybe around a metre. The part underground when seen was described as a dirty grey colour, plump and pot-bellied like a blood-gorged louse, and the narrow segments of its barrel-shaped torso were covered with sparse bristles. It appeared not to have any legs, but its pincers were almost the same length as its entire body, so the book describes an antlion-like creature about the size of a man. Now with that in mind, would you like to see the creature as Netflix and Lauren Histrick made it? Are you sure? Here you go. And what the hell is that supposed to be? When standing, that thing looks maybe 30 foot tall. It doesn't dig a pit and wait at the bottom of it. Ciri didn't fall into the pit which wasn't even there. She instead sensed something was wrong, and that something was this giant monstrosity hiding beneath the sand. It has now what? 8 legs that are maybe 12 foot long each, so 2 to 3 metres, with spikes on the end of each and a massive scorpion tail. So they took a man-sized underground antlion thing and made it into a 30 foot tall giant crab scorpion monster. That sounds book accurate, doesn't it? So similar in many ways as to what they did with Margarita Lawanteel. And instead of stabbing it while the big bald unicorn helped her, in the book the unicorn helped Ciri quite a lot by stomping it. Instead, in the series, Ciri beat it into the Shadow Realm by pulling off part of its carapace and smashing it over the head with it after a jump that would put an NBA basketball player to shame. Do I need to remind you that in this book scene, Ciri is supposed to be a tired 14-year-old girl being played by a 22-year-old actress in the show, and in the context of the show, she's supposed to be suffering from starvation, heat stroke and dehydration. And because I forgot to put it in the last part, Korath is over here. That's the big desert where Ciri allegedly is. So Ciri went a hell of a long way in that rogue portal that she took, and Ciri then just declared where she was.
Red sand. Korath.
Like it was supposed to mean something, when in the show, it's never once been established what Korath even is. Antlions are quite interesting, by the way. Real antlion larvae tend to have 6 very small legs. They also have a very interesting life cycle similar to a dragonfly. They have a winged adult phase. I dread to think what that thing's adult life cycle is like. It must be the size of an airliner. As for the cosplay this time, I did find this cosplay of a woman dressing as Yaskia the Bard, and I tried to be careful what I put up in the cosplay section. So, no kids. Even if a toddler dressed as Chewbacca or an Ewok is monstrously cute, I try to avoid anyone who looks under 18, but it can be a bit tricky when someone's a bit baby-faced like this person is, because, well, dear lord, she's certainly shaped like a full-grown woman, and she's cosplaying as Samus Aran from the Metroid games, I believe, and if I was her father, I wouldn't let her leave the house dressed like that. No, you're not going out without a jacket, and maybe also a boiler suit. I mean, I know what men are like, I know what I'm like. I'd still be worried about her if she was 25. I mean, what do you do if she's your daughter? Teach her martial arts? Get her a lifetime supply of mace? It seems I'd be one of those dads that lets his daughter have her boyfriend over and then stands outside her door with a baseball bat. And another problem I have with it is that the showrunners repeatedly let their politics get in the way of the story. So Ciri started out as a princess. She's been taught skills by Geralt and Yennefer, she's grown, she's learnt to fight. This is the moment of the story when she realises she's all alone and she has to grow and rely just on herself. This is where she grows up in many ways in the book, and the showrunners just can't let her have even that. She can't be injured and struggling and doing her best to survive against a man-sized monster while needing the unicorn's help. In the series, she has to put her arm back in the socket herself
And then he hit.
fight a monster the size of a building while jumping around like she's Supergirl, and she does most of the work with very little help from the unicorn. Somebody actually reviewed this episode on IMDb and said, "This was all according to the book, so stop complaining." One person said people shouldn't review it if they haven't read the books. Another, it was a great episode and followed the novel very well it was based on. Perfect book adaptation, and what can they mean? I'm sorry, but you're either delusional or you're just lying to yourselves and everyone else. The episode is very different from the book. In the book, Ciri was about 14 years old, being played in the show by an actress that is 22, and she's playing the character a lot older. So if you're going to insist that this episode is book accurate, take this scene in which Ciri tries to use fire magic to heal the injured big-balled unicorn and sees a vision of the historical character Falca. Falca supposedly went crazy in her day and started a very bloody civil war in the far past, and this happens.
I'm going insane.
Powerful women have been labelled insane since the dawn of time.
So if you maintain that this episode is book accurate, can you point out to me what page of the fourth Witcher book that line is on? How about this one?
It was the system that failed me most. Father was just a spoke in a wheel that had been rolling for generations.
Do you think it'll ever change?
You want to change the system, Princess Cyrilla? Burn it to the ground.
I'm looking at this part of the book right now, and it doesn't seem to be in there. Maybe it got lost in translation from Polish to English, or maybe the people saying this is book accurate are talking as much balls as the unicorn has. Can you tell me where any of this dialogue that is lifted directly from current day feminist doctrine was in the book? The episode is filled with the creatives' politics again. There are now 3 scenes of Ciri seeing Falca in visions in the series, instead of the one that was in the book. They've also added scenes of Ciri seeing her mother Pavetta and her grandmother Calanthe. The sequence of Ciri walking alone in the desert that a lot of people found intensely boring, well, the showrunners chose to make that artificially longer. Falca in the book is described as a tall, young woman with long, straight, coal-black hair, and they couldn't even get that right. This woman's hair is clearly curly. They could not even be bothered to straighten it. You would have thought the book would maybe also have mentioned her thick Scottish accent. The accents in the show drive me crazy. There's never a feel you're in a particular region with its own customs and culture and accents. They've also written a whole new character into the story that wasn't there in the book to increase the diversity of the existing cast, the majority of whom have already had the ethnicity of their characters changed to accommodate the maker's politics. That character is this actress, Menga Zhang, playing the character Milva, who quite typically for the Witcher casting also has next to no experience. She's been in one thing prior to being in The Witcher. She was in the Shang-Chi movie, and that's it. Maybe people claiming this is book accurate can point out to me where she was in the book. The scenes of Henry Cavill mangled on a sickbed are also pretty much absent from the book. By the time Jaskier finds him in the book, he's pretty much healed and back to normal. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm pro creative freedom. If someone wants to write a story where everyone in it are British-born people with Nigerian ancestry, have at it. Koreans writing a story about groups of Koreans in Korea, fine. If it's good, I may even watch it. If someone wants to write a story where every single character is a man attracted to other men, fine, write it. Write your story as long as it's legal. Maybe just keep away from explicit content involving kids. But where I draw the line is editing someone else's work to put your politics into it. I don't appreciate people trying to gaslight me and tell me this is book accurate when it demonstrably isn't. In short, if you don't like the Witcher story, don't make the Witcher story. Go and write a new story, because the fans of the original work are not going to thank you for remaking it for a modern audience and changing everything. And it gets worse for me when the original author is no longer even around to defend their work, like Tolkien. You don't get to retroactively censor their work to fit your politics. It's creepy and in very bad taste. So to sum up, if you want to make a painting with two men in love with each other in the painting, fine. If I don't like it, I can just not look at the painting. But you don't get to retroactively change the Mona Lisa to put the two men in the background kissing, and make the Mona Lisa plus size and a different ethnicity just to suit your politics. Ciri's unicorn friend is injured by the antlion creature and can't walk. It has a deep wound, so Ciri lays a bit of cloth on the wound and it's good to walk again. She then heals it and collapses at the edge of the desert. The magic scared the unicorn and she's now alone. She's found unconscious by a group of men in robes that appear to be looking for her. Now, some changes would have had to be made to the book, because it's a long-standing problem with the show that a lot of the story happens in the thoughts of the POV characters. So how do you let the audience know what a character's thinking? Well, they can say it out loud, but then you end up with Ciri walking in a desert for the entire episode and talking to herself. And I maybe would have gotten around this by using flashbacks to show what Ciri was thinking at any given time. In the series, Ciri just pops her own shoulder back into the joint after it's been dislocated, and it goes back in really easily. It's kind of unfeasible how easy it is using a method that doesn't even seem to exist.
And then he hurt.
Most of the methods seem to require another person in order to apply enough leverage. And if you've dislocated your own shoulder, by the way, it may be best if you don't try and treat it yourself. The medical advice seems to be to immobilise the arm in a sling or something like it and go to a doctor. You can do some real damage to yourself if you try and put your own shoulder back in and do it wrong. You can do permanent nerve damage. There are also major blood vessels you can rupture. It's not unknown for it to be fatal, apparently. Don't be like Ciri, go to a doctor.
And then he hurt.
Fuck. Jesus.
You've got spunk and balls. And I like that in a woman.